Hey, this is Steve. This is my video response for our Role of the Artist assignment. This is my prompt 1 Role of the Intention response. Just a heads up, I will be changing outfits so that you can decipher which part of the 3 prompts I am on. So this is my outfit for prompt 1. First question, how did the intention of your work shift over time? My original intention wasn't very exciting. All I had really as a concept was that I wanted it to be sort of disturbing. I wanted to play with the idea of breathing, and that fear of failure was going to be my general sabotage. Eventually, I decided to shift from that into this idea of discomfort and how my sabotage is how I sometimes feel as though I'm hiding behind a mask, as if sometimes I feel like the emotions that come out of myself aren't genuine, which does come out of just the way I grew up. I had some toxic friendships here and there that just kind of cemented this way of thinking into my mind. Um, so that was a sabotage that I decided to go with for my final product. Hiding behind a mask, feeling as though I am not genuine with the kind of character that I am. Um, when the dance, at what point did the dance take over? Um, I would say when I decided to let my movement speak for itself, because at first I only had my concept and was just playing around with like creepy movements during class until eventually I decided to work on this outside of class in a studio and just kind of played around with improv. And then I started to like what I was coming up with movement wise. And then I took the ideas that I got from my movement and decided to scrap the original part that I had and create something new off of the new movement that I was creating that I was more satisfied with. And so that's sort of how I decided to let my movement speak for itself. Just how kind of I touched, how I kind of realized with Jan Van Dyke's article about anti-intentionalists and like letting their work speak for themselves, like not really wanting to spoon feed the audience what their intention was. I feel like I sort of became an anti-intentionalist. Instead, like here was my concept that I personally had. However, I didn't feel um, the need to really make it blatant for the audience. I kind of instead wanted the audience to interpret it however they wanted, including the dialogue that I eventually came up with for my spoken word portion. Um, Next question. Oh, how did you make choices about your movement and what styles influenced me? So this came a lot with my improv that I had in my studio or in my studio space, which obviously modern because most of our creative classes from last year kind of gave us more modern techniques to work with, um, as well as that's just how a lot of people choreograph at ASU, more with modern intent. But I decided to take a few inspirations from my urban class, such as popping and waving, as well as breaking. Not sure if you noticed that, but I threw a little bit of that into there. I also recently, in my jazz class, I've been having a lot of fun in there, so I took a lot of inspiration from like movement, so spine work, um, a lot of material that Lena has been giving us in class that I decided to incorporate into my solo. As well as ballet. I did one ballet movement in there. I'm not sure how noticeable it was, but I kind of switched my feet in the air and landed into a plie, and then kind of did this moment, that little movement. I just wanted to play around with a different style because like I feel like I never do ballet in any like material that I create, and I just wanted to add a little bit of everything, even if that was just one movement. Um, how did the side of the theater expand or limit my choices? I would say it expanded because the theater is a space that I have worked with prior to college. It's what I'm used to. It's what I like being in. I love dancing in the theater. I just felt free to use whatever I wanted in theater. Like the possibilities for me were endless. However, I kind of limited myself, but not not accidentally, on purpose, I decided for my concept that I only wanted to use the up, the upstage half of the stage, because the downstage portion of the stage was going to symbolize my affirmation that I couldn't get to because I was spending so much time in my sabotage. So that's how I kind of limited my piece to just the upstage half. Um, oh, how did my collaboration with someone expand or limit my choices? Uh, I would say it kind of limited me, unfortunately, because I felt as though they were the ones that were only in charge of lighting. I'm not sure if that just became if that came just because of how I interpreted the instructions or how the instructions themselves were delivered by my instructor. I didn't know we could contribute a whole lot to our lighting. But if I had been comfortable enough to propose my ideas to my collaborator, I feel like my piece would have been lit much differently. I sort of just told them like, yeah, like give me your ideas. I did provide some suggestions here and there and some input of what I thought, but I never gave them like full ideas of my concepts for lighting that I wanted, um, which was kind of crummy. So taking the two other optional responses, something different I would do next time, obviously work better with my collaborator and give them more of my ideas and my vision instead of focusing so much on my own choreography. Really taking time to invest in my ideas for lighting. And then the other question, how did I how did I develop my work? Uh, and it gives me examples of notes, music videos. I dabbled into a variety of sources of inspiration. One of the biggest inspirations was Mira's sound score for her undergrad piece last year, um, entitled Compos Mentis. I loved the aesthetic of the piece. It was just so abstract and melancholy that I really wanted a similar aesthetic for my own piece. So whenever I would improv in a studio space, I sometimes would play that sound score in the background for inspiration, as well as previous videos that I've seen of poets being really passionate with their poetry. I took inspiration from those videos that I've seen in my past to really just invoke a lot of emotion with my spoken word portion of my piece. As well as notes, I used notes just to decide what I wanted to say for my spoken word portion, what worked and what wouldn't work, what I thought sounded cool and what sounded just kind of cheesy. I would cross things off here and there until I finally came up with my final draft of my spoken word and decided to stick with it. Hey, part two, role of art and the artist. Why is dance important to me? Dance making is important first and foremost simply because I love to express my ideas. I just have a lot of ideas in my brain that I love to put out in various contexts, dance, drawing, writing. Usually these ideas come like when I'm on a walk or just going about my usual day. I will like write it down, have it in the back of my head on a piece of paper so that I can revisit it and one day have it become something physical because I love to share. That is my personal will. I just love to share my own ideas and give ideas to other creators. Really, anything that just expresses the kind of person that I am. Or going to the TED Talk and the Nina Simone interview, I also acknowledge that art can really be used to invoke feelings into people, that it can be used as something powerful for positive change. And I truly believe that I am capable of that as well. I haven't really, you know, I haven't dived into that yet, into really creating something for social change on a wide scale. However, I do believe that I cause or invoke some sort of change within people's personal lives. That's one of my goals, to really inspire people like through any form of dance, whether it's simply done for entertainment or if there's some sort of symbolism behind a piece of art work like a dance, um, to just invoke inspiration into people to go chase something that they want or change something about themselves that they've been wanting to change for a while that has been negatively affecting them in their life, to go make that positive change for them. And reflecting modern times the way that Nina Simone said that an artist should be. I reflect modern times with whatever's happening currently in my life in that moment. such as with the solo that I just did. Very much so reflected some inner conflicts that I've been having recently with myself. That's the kind of scale that I have my work reflect. Not so much all the way up there socially yet in a social context and politics, but mostly I reflect on the times within my own personal life, as well as um, social media sometimes. I am currently thinking about submitting a piece and creating something for an undergrad show sometime soon about issues within gay culture. Not sort of like the culture of Grinder and like all those hookup apps and stuff like that. Like I don't know, it's just some sort of piece that I've been kind of thinking about creating that will sort of dive into that issue within the community, the rainbow community that I'm part of. Hey, part three of my assignment. So, for the reading, I decided to read Streets to the Stage. The first question of, do I relate to this reading? I sure do. I agree with a lot of the statements that were said by all of the various artists that were interviewed. Um, but first, I want to talk about the positivity that comes with bringing street style dances into the context of a concert hall and a professional production, which is that was stated by D. Sabella Grimes. She sort of touched on the fact that when you bring these different styles into this space, they can add diversity to the movement vocabulary of the whole show and inspire the rest of the pieces to kind of do other things that they're not used to. It adds that next level of diversity into a production. However, there are a lot of conflicts that come with taking a street style dance and putting it into this setting, which a lot of them discuss that it could be appropriation of the original style, like because it isn't being performed by someone who was actually part of that it might be just an artist trying to embellish themselves into the style, but not really um, honoring the culture of it and just performing it just because they think it looks cool, as well as the idea of whitewashing and the culture being appropriated in like slang terms by white people and stuff like that. Uh, there's I wasn't aware of this concern until I came to college because in high school we would do hip hop on stage and I just thought that that was a valid form to do on a stage. I had no idea that this was an issue, but now really being involved in this setting, I realize that it is a genuine concern that people should have in the dance world. This also spoke to me something that Grimes said about how a lot of choreographers and dance people in charge of the productions, say that they want diversity and they want to bring these street styles into this context, but they don't support them. Like they only want that diversity, but they don't really help them develop their own work. And they also like to make the street dance a hybrid of modern, which I have seen this happen. Like you can take the style of this street dance in a professional content production. There will always be that underlying modern kind of aesthetic, which is like symbolism and stuff like that. For the second question about where my movement bias comes from, I would say Carly Condor is the biggest inspiration for my bias, simply because last year we had her for first semester um, for our creative practices class, and she really cemented her ideologies about not being cliche with pieces such as not starting center and not doing some movements because they are just tired and cliche, and they also just don't add much substance to a piece anymore. These ideologies have stuck with me ever since I took her class. Um, so now, whenever I go view dance, I have these expectations in mind from Carly Condor. So now I judge accordingly. If I see something that would be considered cliche, I automatically just grow tired of it. I believe that that could have been edited out. Even for concerts that are done for commercial reasons, like for pure entertainment, such as a high school dance show, I still catch myself being like, "Oh, that was cliche. Something better could have been added instead of that for more substance." However, I judge more on song and like choreography appeal more just because it's a commercialized context. And finally, for personal movement practices, I take those same ideologies for personal influence when I choreograph. Thank you for listening. That was my video. Peace.